welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk About ... Once again, I am the Big Daddy D, David Mabley, joined here once again by...
I am Luke Murphy.
Whoa. Excuse me. Have you...
Sorry, do I need to just disappear?
I thought this was just middle-aged movie boys. You appear to have brought a youngling to the...
We've brought a hobbit.
A hobbit?
Tallest bloody hobbit I've ever seen, mate.
I know, I was going to say.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is the elusive third member of our group. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Josh.
This is Josh Bray.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, he
hasn't paid the membership.
There is a reason.
He hasn't paid the membership fee yet.
Well, he's our occasional cameraman.
Well,
yes.
yeah.
He appeared very briefly in our Zardos episode. He was the cameraman.
He was behind on the camera.
And he was also behind the camera when we filmed the City Hunter episode.
Yes, he was.
But you're probably wondering, why have we brought Josh onto the podcast?
Because it's all his fault.
That's right, because on today's episode, rather than talking about a film or a television programme, we are breaking new ground by talking about a podcast. And not just any old podcast.
Oh, yes. I think this is where basically we go on, because this is all your fault. Everything about this is your fault. This is you that mentioned this. This is you that said, "Oh, you need to listen to this.
You need to listen to this podcast."
Yeah, it's one of those things that you're like, it's not what it is, but it's
No,
not what it
really,
sounds
really
like,
is
but
what
it is really. So
yeah.
Anyway, so this the title of the podcast is "My Dad Wrote a Porno," and it's one of those ones that you think, is this exactly what I think it is? And yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is essentially where a guy called Jamie Morton, essentially his dad wrote an erotic novel.
Yeah.
Or
Well-
a series of erotic novels.
Yeah, as you do, just going through, your parents' attic or something like that. Hey, Dad, what's this? Oh, it's a poem that I just happened to have written.
Oh.
Jamie Morton, who I believe is a television writer and producer.
Yeah.
He has a 60-year-old retired father who now lives in Brazil. He's a former builder, so I'm assuming he must have had his own company and did quite well for himself. And one year he handed him a manuscript of something he'd been working on in his retired his retired years. He decided to become an author.
Yeah.
And he started writing these novels in his shed, which is a bit worrying because my dad's recently purchased a garden shed, so I'm starting to...
I was about to say as well.
It's not just a shed, it is the pavilion.
Oh, a pavilion.
Pavilion. Sorry.
So,
Other retired dads, get allotments.
Yeah.
Like mine. And there's an award-winning allotment, I might add.
Well, there you go.
Oh, very good.
First
Well, the hobbies included golfing. That would be
spoils a good walk. I've got to go golf, to be honest with you. I mean, why? And it kind of begs the question, out of all of these wonderful pastimes that you could do to fill your time in your retired years and what have you, how the hell did the thought of, do you know something? I think I'm going to write an erotic novel.
Well,
Why does that, how did that thought first come into his head?
Just let's just set something straight. This is not an erotic novel.
No.
This is an erotic novel.
It's awful.
Well,
let's be fair. It's awful.
It is awful, but it's one of those ones where it's so bad, it's good.
yes. Well, again, to Jamie's utter horror, not only did he realise that what his father had written was an erotic novel, it was really a really bad erotic novel.
Yes.
It's not as if you could say that my dad wrote a good porno.
He wrote a terrible porno.
Terrible one.
So his father handed him a manuscript of something he'd been working on and said, would you mind reading it and reviewing it? And when he discovered, to his utter horror, what it was. I mean, some people would find that, finding out that your father is writing pornography in his garden shed is a little bit traumatic, but Jamie, to give him all the credit in the world, has embraced this, and after reading it out aloud at a Christmas party, and no doubt getting plenty of laughs from it, he ended up looping in his friends James Cooper and Radio 1 DJ Alice Levine to read through a chapter every week of the erotic masterpiece that his dad had written. Now, we never find out what his dad's actually called, because he has...
Which is good.
Which is just as well.
Oh.
But he does have a pen name, as all good authors have. Josh, what is that pen name?
That pen name consists of his 2 favourite films, which is the name Rocky Flintstone.
Yabba Dabba Doo! Adrian.
So that's 2 films we've ruined.
Oh, believe me, as we go on, there are more and more films that will be ruined as a result of the wonderful world of Rocky Flintstone.
Films, objects, pastimes, everything else.
Certain
Put it down.
pieces of fruit,
put it
polygrammics. Oh, there's an apple here, Luke. What's that doing there?
Oh god.
No. No. We're not reviewing the apple data. We're not reviewing the apple.
We'll see.
It's a natural desire.
Together, the 3 brave readers pore over the sexual misadventures of Belinda Blumenthal, the worldwide sales director in the high-stakes world of international cookery.
No, hold on. It's the industry of pots and pans, not cookware. It's described as just pots and pans.
Just exclusively pots and pans.
Wait.
Pots and pans. You want to sell some forks? No, pots and pans only.
Yeah, but knives and forks aren't cookware, they're cutlery.
Well, still, they're normally in the same shop, or same area of the shop.
Okay, well, she gets ahead in the high-stakes world of pots and pans. And how does she get through this high-stakes world of pots and pans? Why? Through sex mazes, erotic tombolas, riding gear, industrial espionage, and business trips to Amsterdam.
Via the Millennium Dome and various stately houses and window shopping. Oh my god.
Not
there.
I mean,
That's a whole new phase to the term window shopping.
Absolutely.
it really is.
So, at the time of recording this, they have just started the 5th series of the podcast. When I don't think
We don't know how many more there are. That's the problem.
I think they only intended to maybe be a trilogy, but the way that it's taken off, they've just continued to do it. Now, at the time of recording this, we've just listened to the 2nd episode of season 5, which has basically had a whole new way of dealing with comatose patients, shall we just say?
Controversial method of treating patients in comas.
What was it?
I can't see it catching on.
Was it punching the chest or punching the heart? I believe it was described as.
Well, that was half of it.
And to bring him out of the coma, all you probably need to do is have a wild sex act, presumably on the bed where the patient is.
On top of said person. But jumping ahead. That's book 5.
Well, when we sort of got on to book 4 and sort of leading into book 5, it's upped the stakes somewhat and has turned. While the first 3 books were very much erotic novels, but with this bizarre stuff going off.
Yeah.
By the time we get to the 4th book,
he introduces the plot.
That is something, because you could literally split the whole season in 2. One half, there's no plot, there's no any sort of timeline, there's no nothing. It just jumps around There's sort of random scene changes, there's random time changes, there's gaps everywhere. To
the point that when you're listening to it, you actually don't know. Well, hang on a minute. We were just over here. We were in X. Now we're in Y. Please, give me a.
It's like Belinda is in the office doing X, Y, and Z, and next, literally 2 words later, she jumped off the plane in Amsterdam. What?
There's no sort of passage of time.
No.
Rocky's idea of a passage of time is, alright, it's a new paragraph, therefore we are in a completely different place. We don't need to tell the reader we're in a completely different place.
Not necessarily even following the same character that we were following. Because you'll do a paragraph about Belinda, then you'll go off and basically go to somewhere else and think, oh, hang on, wait a second. oh, we're here. Right, okay, we're here now.
And it's gotten even more erratic now that the novel has actually now turned from being an erotic an erotic novel to half spy novel,
Yes.
half erotic novel.
Yes.
Where there's been a lot of very odd things going on because it turns out there's quite a lot of high stakes in Pots and
I'll tell you
Pans.
something. I was not aware of the level of industrial espionage within the pots and pans industry.
I mean,
It's
Well,
very, very cutthroat.
To the
Just
point where
generally.
we've got like kidnappings and car bombs going on.
And really, really crap spies.
Yeah.
yeah, really crap spice. Car bomb goes off. I believe this is an insurance claim. What?
Really?
Yeah, car bombs are typical if you want to get a few quid from your insurance company.
Just set a car bomb.
Set a car bomb off, write your car off, it's fine.
But to be honest, we should have seen this coming. Obviously, Pots and Pans is a huge industry to the point where there's a sales conference being held in the O2 Arena in London,
The Millennium Dome.
which, as Rocky calls it, the Millennium Dome building, which typically is the type of place where you'd go to see Adele,
Yeah.
not necessarily have a Pots and Pans conference there.
Yeah, no. That's not the place that you'd expect it.
Yeah.
But then there was the whole giveaways and things like that.
Yeah.
You normally get at a convention, you might get a sticker or even a T-shirt if they push the
Yeah.
boat out. Maybe one of those metal bottles. But no, Belinda decides to give away everybody a non-stick tin wok.
Yes.
A non-stick tin wok.
Yeah,
Yes.
tin.
Is that
You don't-
actually a thing?
No,
No.
They don't make pans or anything out of tin anymore.
No.
And I don't believe it would be non-stick either.
No.
It'd have to have. No.
How many people would you get in to fill the O2 Arena? Sorry, the Millennium Dome building.
A couple of thousand,
Yeah.
if not more.
Well, yeah, definitely more.
Yeah.
I think they figured it out. It was going to work out about 20,000, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So
basically,
it's-
kiss all your profits goodbye then.
It's safe to say that, I mean, Belinda joins the company Steel Pots and Pans in the first episode where she has the rather unusual job interview where she has to remove her clothing.
Yes.
You forget that she felt exposed after taking off her stockings. She was butt naked before then, but then after taking off her stockings, she then
That's
felt
when she felt
vulnerable.
it
Very vulnerable.
Yeah.
An unusual interview technique if ever there was one.
Yeah.
And it's safe to say that since Belinda joined Steel Pots and Pans, we can argue that Steels have actually done a lot worse since employing her. Things must really be going downhill. It seems quite oblivious how she can actually turn things around when you're giving away 20,000 non-stick tin woks for free in the O2 Arena. Maybe if you stop doing publicity stunts like that, you might start making some money.
It's actually great. I'm just talking about the business side of things for the moment. How is this company afloat? I mean,
Yeah,
seriously.
yeah.
Yeah, no. Her expenses bill alone
Yeah, I
must
mean,
be
come on.
huge.
I mean, yeah. Oh, right. I mean,
Just, well, go on,
it's
sorry.
just that silly.
Mm. And that's
That's what makes the entire thing brilliant.
that is, well, a lot of the humour comes from how absurd it is.
Yes.
But a lot of the humour also comes to the fact that Jamie Morton is essentially reading out aloud an erotic novel that his father has written, to which James and Alice endlessly tease him about.
Yeah.
When they did the one-off HBO special, and we'll go on to talk about that a little bit more, Alice does ask Jamie, says, "Are you proud of your dad?" And he's like, "Not right now, no." And it's like, Jamie, your dad wrote this. It's like, I know, and he points to the big screen behind him when it's got "My dad wrote a poem" in massive
Massive
letters. I said, fucking no. Can't get that any bigger. So this is the constant thing going off where Jamie's reminded, Jamie, your dad wrote this.
Belinda opened her leg.
One leg.
Singular.
She just sort of spatchcocked her thigh.
Lust and professional respect pulsed through her body. It was as if Natasha could taste it on her breath.
Have you eaten lust and professional respect?
Natasha moaned deeply.
You proud of him?
Whoa. Not right now.
And
This has been going for 5 series.
Yeah.
It's been going for 5 years.
The-
Probably longer than 5 years, actually, when you think about it.
But yeah.
now, aside from the Q&A sessions, the mysterious Rocky Flintstone does tend to stay out of the spotlight. He's no doubt delighted with the amount of attention that his books are getting, but maybe not quite understanding why.
Yeah. Well, the first 4 books were written before the podcast came out, so it'd be interesting to see how book 5 develops, because that was written after series 1 of the podcast came out. So it'd be interesting to see what fame and glory does to his writing.
He's now well aware of his fame.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting now.
Yeah, we'll see what fame does. They say it corrupts you. We'll see if it corrupts Mr. Rocky Flintstone.
Well, the podcast has certainly been incredibly successful. I mean, 180 million downloads later, the podcast has now expanded into a world tour, well, a second world tour. They're going to be going to places now like America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Helsinki, Finland, even Amsterdam. And of course a number of tours in the UK as well.
And this is for a
including a show at the Royal Albert Hall.
The thing is, they've sold that venue out.
Yes.
They literally have completely destroyed the Royal Albert Hall, reading out smut in the place that you have massive historical events and
I mean, the proms have just finished at the Royal Albert Hall last week.
It will never be the same.
It will never be the same.
No.
And they did exactly the same to the Sydney Opera House. Again, selling it out, reading smut.
This is a podcast. It's a podcast.
Normally we would
absolutely blows the mind that a podcast that's only maybe half an hour a week or something like that, and it's that big. And it's gotten that big,
and a lot of it's just been through word of mouth, hasn't it?
I mean that's the whole point about this one. It is via word of mouth.
Yeah.
You can't really advertise this because you need to get past some sort of censors or what have you. I mean, we never found out about it until he piped up.
Until Josh mentioned it.
Yeah. And going through 4 series within 6 months later.
Yeah.
Just to try and get ready for this.
Sort of binge listen. And now what the excruciating thing is, I've binge listened to like books 1 to 4, and now I've got to wait for book 5 for like a new chapter.
Actually, to be honest with you, I'm all right with that because
it gives time for therapy.
Yeah, absolutely, because I can never listen to when catching up. I can never listen to more than 2 episodes in a week, and I definitely couldn't listen to one after the other. But
also, it's a bit awkward when you've got a family at home. It's like, where are you going, Dad? I'm just off to listen to some porn. I mean,
it's like the fact when the HBO special was the HBO special was coming on TV. Showing the HBO the weekend, 3 or 4 days later, it was on Sky Atlantic or something like that. You saved up the tape, and then when thankfully it wasn't my children that were doing this, but when the missus is scrolling down, what's that?
Yeah.
Right, darling. I can explain. It's not what you. No, it is what you think, but it's not as. No, actually, it is as bad as you think. How can I explain this? I'll just delete it.
I'll explain this without getting a divorce.
I'll just delete it first and foremost. There we go. Delete it. That's fine. And then trying to explain about this, and then my wife's just going.
Because your wife did not know that you listened to this at all.
How did it is?
Well, no, I mean, my wife didn't know about it until I actually showed her the HBO special. And to be honest, she did sit and watch it with me. There were a number of times where she kind of laughed, other times she grimaced.
Yeah.
And afterwards I said, do you want to start listening to the podcast? She was like, no. But we have told other people about it, people who we are friends with, people that we work with. So we have spread the word, and they are, and created some more Belinkers, as the fans are referred to.
And it's just one of those things. It's just, as soon as you've probably got to be the right corrupted mind frame to actually listen to it. But once you find like many things, once you find like-minded people, then people are going to start listening to it, and
I believe that you
I always
refer
see
to
the
them
same
as perverts when you think about it.
You in a roundabout way calling us all perverts?
Yeah.
I think we're all a bit perverted in a way, really, aren't we?
We're sat there at work.
We like to make our...
listening to an erotic novel.
Yeah. That's the way we work, for God's sake. But the British like to make out that they're all sort of stiff upper lip, as we no doubt saw in the previous episodes with the Carry On films and what have you. But when you boil down to it, behind all that British stiff upper lip, we're all perverts, really.
Oh yeah.
Every single one of us. All I'll say is this: it's done very well for for a podcast that's consisted of a couple of friends sitting around a table talking bollocks into some cheap microphones.
Well, there you go.
So, amongst those Belinkers, we've had a lot of famous fans of the podcast appearing in the footnotes episodes. These come in between the regular episodes. Now, some of the guests that have appeared in these footnote episodes have included Elijah Wood,
Mm-hmm. He was in the first one.
Daisy Ridley,
She has completely spoiled Star Wars for me now. I can't watch Star Wars anymore.
Michael Sheen,
The great man himself.
who compared Rocky Flintstone to Shakespeare of all people.
Well,
I think it was more of a joke than anything else, but Rocky
however, he has
quite-
taken that seriously.
He has taken that
He
to
has
heart.
taken that very,
He
very
has.
seriously.
And I think one of our personal favourites,
Her Royal Highness herself.
yes, Dame Emma Thompson.
Dame Emma Thompson.
Yes.
Her Royal Highness.
And many of them have actually expressed an interest to play one of the characters should a feature film of the series be made. Elijah Wood in particular has expressed the desire to play the youngish man
Everything's ish.
It's Rocky's obsession with ish.
yes,
So tallish.
tallish,
Tallish,
biggish,
youngish.
goldish, youngish,
Smallish.
smallish. So Elijah Wood's expressed desire to play the youngish man that shares a turkey sandwich with Belinda, amongst other things, whilst Daisy Ridley is actually willing to wear full body prosthetics to play the Duchess, an older woman with a taste for kinky sex, riding gear and vibrating toys. Which I think
Now you
leads us-
understand why Star Wars has now been spoiled for me.
Which I think leads us nicely onto some of the characters. Now we've already talked a little bit about Belinda first of all, but who is Belinda Blumenthal, Josh?
Well, I think she's described as a high-flying sales executive, but in reality, I'd say she's somebody who does very little other than the occasional blink. She doesn't say much, but she loves to just get a kit off and have a good time, really.
And usually, whether those sexual encounters take place in either a sink or a mucky maze or in Ken Dewsbury's cellar.
I mean, I'll never look at a trellis the same way again.
Or handcuffed to a trellis
With plastic handcuffs.
with plastic handcuffs from the pound shop, it seems. Belinda's sexual encounters will almost always be marvellous for her. Belinda also frequently swears by the Norse gods. Despite not being pagan nor from any sort of Nordic country, as far as we can tell. Remarkably, God himself appears as a character in Book 4, if only briefly.
Oh yeah.
And Belinda at one point makes a little trip up to heaven. Where
She does.
She does.
And who does she see in heaven?
A number of
A
people.
number of people. Nelson Mandela is one of them. Dick Van Dyke, even though Dick Van Dyke is dead.
He's not dead.
Yeah, I had to very quickly Google that and said, Dick Van Dyke's not dead, is he?
No.
And he isn't.
This was a complete shock because everyone was like, he's not dead, is he? Wait, does Rocky know something we don't?
And also her third grade bassoon teacher as well.
Oh yes.
And they were all naked.
Yes.
Well, it wouldn't be Belinda if it wasn't.
Yeah,
Well,
because this is heaven after all.
Yeah.
But of course, Belinda's time in heaven was only brief, for she returned to Earth, for she has unfinished business to deal with, like the Crow. But
And now you have just spoiled the Crow for me.
oh
Thank you.
yes, yes.
We should probably make a list of things not to watch, not to do.
Oh, I'm probably going to have a list that'll appear in the video at some point of things ruined by the podcast.
Little counter.
Little count of things ruined. So,
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh god.
yes, yes.
I can't watch that one.
Oh.
as well as other films which we'll come on to. So, she used to work for, she currently works for Steele's Pots and Pans, but according to her CV, she previously worked for another cookery company. What was that called?
I can't remember if I'm honest.
Would you like me to tell you?
Yeah, go
Please
on.
do.
Typhoid Cookery.
Oh, that was the one.
Because when you're thinking of coming up with a name for your company, you think of ancient diseases.
Yeah.
Typhoid.
Typhoid, yeah. So, as well as Belinda is by no means the only woman in the fit. One that's been quite prominent recently has been the character of Bella.
Or Donna.
Or Donna, depending on. It's
Literally,
Rocky keeps flirting between either Colin and Bella or Donna.
It's the whole. It sets the bar for the entire
Yes.
series. Was it a genuine mistake or was it deliberate?
I'll tell you something, if there was an editor, if Rocky had employed an editor, I don't think that the
The books wouldn't exist.
They would not be the
it's
same.
very true, actually.
They wouldn't exist. Then why don't they?
We should point out these books actually do exist, not in a physical form, but as e-books, which you can purchase for like next to nothing on Amazon.
Yeah.
Although the first book has become has like been published into an actual
There is a
physical
physical,
book off the strength of the podcast. Anyway, as well as Belinda and Bella, there's also a number of, like I say, older women. We've previously mentioned the Duchess.
She's an interesting character.
The Duchess.
Not as interesting as the Countess Zara.
Yes, there is also the Countess. Yes, both the Countess and the Duchess are older women with a taste for having very kinky sex
Wild
with younger
the
younger
taste
partners.
eclectic, I think, is probably the way that I would describe it to get past the censors.
And it's not just dirty old women that we have to worry about, but plenty of dirty old men as well. Most notably, Sir James Godwin, who is the CEO of Steel Pots and
Yes.
He is.
who's had certainly had a quick fumble on more than one occasion.
Fumble is probably not the word I'd use to describe it, but sure.
As well as the character of Dr. Robbins, who is a somewhat sort of disturbing character and laughs and giggles quite a fair old bit.
I don't know who gave him his doctorate, but he really doesn't.
I wonder how a lot of these people got their PhDs. Like in a more recent episode, we came across Dr. Stud.
Oh, Dr. Stud.
Yes.
That was an interesting.
That was good. That was okay.
Because that was in book 5 where we've got plot, we've got actual writing techniques. Because everyone assumed Dr. Stud was a man.
Yeah, with an
but
name
in
like
reality,
that.
it turned out it was a woman.
Yeah.
And everyone, we are so sorry. We automatically assumed it was one thing, but it wasn't.
Thank you, Rocky, for challenging our usual thoughts and conventions.
Challenging the patriarchy.
Good man. And going for a more sort of villainous and sort of more repulsive example of a dirty old man, we have Herr Bish.
The wicked Ish Bish.
The wicked Ish Bish. Who is Herr Bish?
Herr Bish is I presume he's the CEO of a competitor in the pots and pans world.
Yes.
Not Bosch.
Bish.
Bish. This is something that Rocky Flintstone likes to do. He doesn't like to use existing names in case there's problems, but he'll change a few of the letters. So, for example, Special K, the cereal, becomes Special J. But yeah, Herr Bish.
Herr Bish.
It exists within East Berlin.
Yes,
So
yes.
East Berlin, in the world of Rocky Flintstone and the world of Belinda Blumenthal, East Berlin is still a place. So the Berlin Wall never came down. It is implied that Bish is ex-East German secret police.
Yes.
So I think he's the
spying for the communist government of East Germany, and which is something
he's
he's
member of the Stasi. So,
Yeah. Which is something he's continuing to do now as the owner and CEO of a pots and pans company, and he holds a grudge against the West in general for his treatment by the British Secret Services. Thus, he's going to extract his retribution upon another pots and pans company.
Not actually against
like the government.
governments or anything like that. He feels as though that the easiest way to bring down the fall of Western civilization is to bring down a pots and pans company.
There are lots of characters.
When you say that loud, you kind of think on it more. Because when you're listening to it, you're just letting it happen, and you get to bits.
Well, it's when you're trying to explain it to your partner afterwards, and you're trying to explain, this happened in this week's episode, and they're just like, what? East Berlin?
I know.
Yes.
And it's not like he's going, well, we're going to stop all cookware into the UK and into the West. No, we're going to stop one specific brand.
Yeah.
Because the other brands are available, well, including his own.
I would imagine there is, because I think they've only ever sort of mentioned sort of Bish and Steels and.
Well, there's typhoid.
And typhoid.
And
So I guess typhoid would take over, or are they going to try and do the same to old typhoid cutlery?
taking over the world, one pots and pans company at a time.
Well, there you go.
There we are. Now, just to show how good the writing is, a lot of characters get brought in and then seem to be completely forgotten about. Bill from HR is a classic
Bill from HR.
who is like mentioned once and then gets the odd mention here and there. As is Dave Wilcox, who is Steel Pots and Pans Western Regional Sales Manager, who gets mentioned once and then is never heard of again.
Yeah, we haven't heard of it.
No, he was mentioned as one of the sales reps, but then just no.
Other regional sales managers include Ken Dewsbury,
Okay.
who owns
Ken.
who owns several flats in Leeds.
Headingley, to be precise.
In Headingley, Leeds. Funnily enough, not too far from where we're actually recording this.
Yeah.
In fact, the three hosts of the podcast all met each other at Leeds
Yeah.
University, so that's a nice little throwback.
You'll never find the bunker, by the way.
Well,
Saying
you
it
never
now.
know.
Well, no, you'll never be able to tunnel your way out of it.
Well, exactly. I mean, to be fair, when we came to the bunker, we had to blindfold him, so even he doesn't know where the bunker is.
Anyway,
Oh god.
not sinister at all. But Ken Dewsbury has a series of flats in Leeds with cellars in, with like showers and things like that, and a series of cameras set up. But the cameras that's not particularly well hid.
No.
Because he tries to film Belinda having a shower at some point. But the
Belinda
camera's
does.
making so much noise and the
And
wires are
just
so
blinking.
visible, it's just, yeah.
It's just a massive, old 1980s style camera
Yeah.
board just basically set up. Yeah.
And surprisingly not, Belinda's not offended by this. In fact, she's actually quite charmed, and rather than being repulsed by this situation, it leads on to full-on sex in Ken Dewsbury's nasty, musky cellar.
But then that also leads into a song. So this is one of the things that the podcast
Oh
does.
my
There is
God,
a number of
Yes,
songs
yes.
written by fans. So these vary from just somebody with cheap recording equipment and a ukulele, for example, trying to sing along to
It's pronounced the ukulele.
precisely, all the way to a properly produced song.
Fully produced, like professionally done, or you could say.
Bizarre.
What,
Yes.
So what is it that Belinda says to Ken? That
Are we allowed
Because
to say it?
she says certain things to Ken, basically saying that she would rather like to have sex with him.
I think at this moment in time we might just have a little break for the music, so we don't have to say it.
Yeah.
'Cause I really, really, really don't want to say it, so I'm not going to.
Well, let's cut to the very talented lady and her ukulele, and let's listen to the song.
Fuck me, Ken, just fuck me. I need it so, so badly. I've been a good girl all day. That twat of a TGWU union man just wouldn't release me. My orgasm's still building. I'm building. I'm building. First penetration of the day. Big Ken will take me all the way. I find your tactics so alluring. I hardly heard the camera whirring. Take me to your student flat. Suck me toes, flip me back. My vaginal lips can gristle. I don't think you're a bit like Fritzl. Fuck me, Ken, just fuck me. I need it so, so badly. I've been a good girl all day.
And we're back in the room. What I love about that is that right at the end of the video, she says, "I hope my kids didn't hear that."
Because at the end of the day,
God bless you.
that's what they're listening to. Like, she's singing about that.
Yeah.
How on earth?
And the one about the more professional one we've talked about, which is by a band called Pomegranates and Rivets, will likely have that as the end credits music for this, because you really do need to hear this. Another prominent character is poor old Des Martin.
Oh.
What can we say about Des Martin?
Lovable loser.
Put it this way: the one thing you need in an erotic novel that's supposed to turn you on and get you all excited is some sad loser who ends up getting divorced from his wife and crying.
Yes, that is true, but
Lovable loser.
he has had sex with Belinda on more than one occasion.
Okay,
so-
then not really lovable, but
Yeah.
definitely a loser.
A loser, definitely.
Yeah.
Who seems to have a thing for writing off cars.
Yes.
That's mentioned a few times.
Although to be honest with you,
Belinda's
has
done
written-
that.
Belinda has written off a car because that was kind of one of the first cliffhangers where
It
she crashed, and we didn't know whether or not she was alive or dead. Spoiler alert: she was alive. And,
That's actually a good point to start talking about the anticlimaxes. Several times in the book, cliffhangers are put into the book.
Sorry.
It had to be said. Cliffhangers are put into the book, which then the following chapter later are either completely discarded or revealed to be a red herring. In the case of Belinda's car crash.
yes. Well, we think that she's dead, but she's...
It's the way that it's written. It's like she like swerved off the road and smashes into a tree, writing off the car, and then she lays there unblinking. And then next chapter, it's just like, oh, she just had she banged her head.
And she's got a flat tyre. And
got a flat tyre.
That's the only damage that's been done.
Oh.
That's as... Yeah.
But that introduces a certain character,
Marco Rodriguez.
and he was Brazilian,
And he knows it.
You know that you're Brazilian? How do you not know what sort of ethnicity you are?
Brazilian with a Boston accent.
Yeah.
apparently.
Oh yeah.
Jamie, while he's reading these out, he's trying to put voices on for some of the
He does his
various
best.
characters. He does his best.
best.
And even he was struggling to do a Brazilian with a bit of Boston accent. So I think he just went for straight Brazilian with that. Well, what is Mr. Rodriguez sort of known for? What is his occupation?
So he was well. I don't know whether to describe him as his official job title because, frankly, bizarre. But he was the plastic surgeon.
Yes.
Was he not?
Yes.
Had his surgery in the middle of the Amazon.
Yeah.
Because
As you do.
just in the middle of the Amazon.
That's where all the celebrities go to get the boobs done. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just going to pop to the Amazon for a couple of weeks.
And
Getting
happens
enlargements.
to know a few of the characters,
Yes.
including
Oh God.
A very prominent character,
Oh,
probably the
no.
most prominent American character.
Well, he's prominent now. He wasn't prominent.
He was definitely not prominent.
wasn't prominent when he was first introduced.
So he was introduced in the maze, funnily enough. He was
Yes,
one of the
he
key
was.
clients. Mr. Jim Sterling.
Mr. Jim, not to be confused with this Jim Sterling, by the way.
Yes, I was about to say, let's make it completely clear that we're talking about a character from a book, not somebody else that you have heard of that is also on YouTube.
Although, to be fair, when you first mentioned Jim Sterling,
That's
what piqued my interest, because I thought you were referring to the YouTuber and podcaster. But no, it turns out Jim Sterling is also a ugly fat slob prone to wearing cowboy hats.
Yes.
And was rather unfortunate down there. In fact, his member was referred to as a small furry animal.
Yes, a vole.
A vole.
A vole. And then one quick trip to the Amazon later, and oh dear, Lord in heaven.
Yes, he has. He has.
large member now.
Yes, he has an enhancement down there.
But
It's more bloody bionic.
Well, it was the way that it was described because he seemed to literally just jump off the operating table and onto a plane to meet Belinda. To which point they
no recovery time, by the way.
Yeah, they then had
yes
fun times. But it was the fact that it started flaking, and Belinda even complained saying, "I hope it doesn't get stuck in my teeth." Which I will never eat a sausage roll again.
And up next being ruined by the podcast, Greg's.
Yes. Because it's described almost as like a flaky pastry, the way it starts to flake away, and she's worried that it'll almost break off inside her, which is just a horrible thought. And like.
And that's not the only enhancement he has done.
No.
What else does he have done to himself?
Oh, well, so when he...
Just to put you in the awkward hot spot.
Yes, yeah, because
when
he
finishes, normally that would be of a certain colour and consistency.
Yes.
But it turns out to be a pale blue colour.
Why is it pale blue?
Pale blue? I don't...
It's never explained.
Well, it is.
Well,
it's not explained why in there.
In the confines of the story, it is not explained. But it is explained why it is, because Rocky says, "Oh well, I just saw this
well, it was
wash or something like that."
Mouthwash.
Mouthwash. Sorry.
Well, I thought it was shampoo. It was Asda's own brand value shampoo is a pale blue colour. So if you've ever used like a supermarket own brand. Like cheap shampoo, it's that pale bluey colour.
You won't be using that again.
You will not be using
that
again. Because apparently Mr. Flintstone was washing his hair with this and then thought, oh, I know what I can do.
I'm going to give my character pale blue jizz.
So, in essence, he was thinking about washing his hair with jizz.
It's very, very interesting that we're not interesting in that way, but it's very interesting we start talking about various bits and pieces of, what can only be described as body horror. Because there are some very, very, very serious undiagnosed medical conditions.
Oh, there really is.
Rocky does seem to be confused about basic human anatomy, i.e. the sentence
both male and female anatomy.
Yeah, the sentence where he says that he grabbed Belinda's cervix. At this point, Alice Levine, bless her, pips up and goes, excuse me, if he did that, he would kill her. Another classic one was entering her clitoris, to which point James pipped up and said, excuse me, I'm the gay one in this podcast, and even I know you can't enter a clitoris. And one of the particularly bad ones, penetrating her ovaries.
I mean, we know that, I don't know, I can't remember which character that was, but if it was Jim Sterling, I know he's described as having a rather large member, but that would not be possible.
This is the point where Alice Levine's catchphrase has become, fuck off. Fuck off.
But it's because half the entire book is just completely absurd.
Yeah.
Completely absurd.
But the amount of times that he goes into sort of very, very weird David Cronenberg style body horror stuff. Like with the aforementioned.
If Jim Sterling's penis isn't enough, Rocky describes the Duchess's nipples as 3 inches long, the same length as the rivets that I'm going to be.
You can't even say it, can you?
Rocky describes the Duchess's nipples as 3 inches long, the same length as the rivets that so famously held the Titanic together. Later they point out that said rivets were actually the size of a kitchen table.
Yes.
But so that ruined the Titanic.
Yeah,
There's one thing.
There's one thing ruined.
And it's other sort of symbols and metaphors that he used. So, again...
Yeah, going back to the pomegranates.
Consider the pomegranate. Don't ever do that again.
I did it earlier on, did you not notice?
I tried not to.
I did not.
So, what tends to happen is that while Rocky's describing Belinda's body, at one point he likes to refer to it as fruit.
Can you not hold
one? Sorry, I don't know what that's doing there. One character, Giselle, has her breasts referred to as kumquats, I believe it was.
I believe so.
Which is a small orange.
Which is a small orange, and rather famously, Belinda's breasts are referred to as pomegranates.
I thought it was the Duchess's.
I think it's a few different characters.
A few characters have had. A few characters have had their charms referred to as.
Can we get rid of that as well? Because that's not happening ever.
Holy apple, sacred apple, take a little chance, get into a trance.
Because of what happens at the end of book 4, the finale reveals that a rival pots and pans company has actually planted a mole within Steele's pots and pans, and the identity of the mole is not revealed until the end of book 4. Again, giving the special one. Yes, the identity is not revealed until the end of book 4. After that, Belinda brings many of these characters back. She trusted co-workers, friends, and allies together to form a society that will countermand whatever Bish has in planned. Now, what is the name of this organisation that she...
Come on, Mr. Murphy.
What is it? The Confidential Order of Cookware Knights.
Because acronyms are fun, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll let you work that one out.
And then a car bomb goes off in Tony's Jag as they leave the building, with Belinda not wondering who's dead and who's alive, and that leads us into book 5.
For insurance purposes.
For insurance purposes. Yes.
Mr. Spooner.
Ah, yes, the crap spy.
Yeah.
So I think
who is responsible? Really, I think all the way through this, I think Rocky's only ever done one thing, from my mind, that's kind of like typical sort of porn trope, to be honest with you, where Spooner, clearly undercover, bursts through and says, "Did anybody call IT support?"
Yeah.
That's the only time where I just went, "Oh God, this
Spooner, who by the way is probably the most incompetent secret agent that we've ever come across. The guy who has these complicated these bracelets and anklets and whatnot that then fold out into a pair of binoculars or a pair of wraparound shades that suddenly become X-ray glasses.
Who got held up at the airport because he was going through duty free.
He was buying duty free.
Jimmy Morton's a car bomb going off, and then he walks back with duty free.
And he wanders in going, oh, must be an insurance claim. For fuck's sake. Now then, can we talk about the time period? Because it's a little unclear as to where it's set. Now, the suggestion is that it's set during the 80s. For example, Zimbabwe is still called Rhodesia. Russia apparently still has a nobility.
Yes.
Yes. So hang on, wait a second. So the Russian Revolution never happened?
Apparently so, yeah. East Berlin is still a thing. And St. Petersburg is still called Leningrad, and it has a countess.
It does.
Also, you would argue that the use of fax machines in the office, right? It's set in the 80s. Nobody has a mobile phone. Oh, actually, no, they do. First episode of chapter 5. First episode of season 5. Someone whips out a Motorola, and you could argue that attitudes to women in general is very much of the 80s.
Yeah.
However, various elements suggest that it's set anywhere between that and the noughties, with the introduction of the O2 arena or the Millennium Dome, as Rob keeps calling it. And then this goes out the window even further, because during book 3 they make references to LinkedIn. We have Archie, the smallest man.
The smallish man.
The smallish man.
So obviously the internet exists.
The internet exists.
So there's references to Facebook. There's references to Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad.
Yeah. So it's really unclear what sort of timeline this is, unless it's on some parallel timeline that certain things didn't happen in history. So
clearly like the Russian Revolution.
Well, yeah.
Which, if you think about it, the fact that it's in East Berlin, which basically means that there's a Berlin Wall, so that obviously there was a Soviet Union, but if there was Russian Revolution never happened, then there probably was. Oh, my brain is melting.
Yeah.
It's also a timeline as well, where the technology would be impossible. We've already spoken of Jim Sterling's enhancements.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've mentioned Spooner's ridiculous gadgets.
Yes.
There's the secret room within the lever room. Now the lever room is a room within steel pots and pans, where the walls and the floor are made up of leather, presumably so it's wiped clean, because that's where a lot of meetings and or sex takes place in. And we find out that within the leather room there is a secret room, isn't there?
There is. You have to use a specific leather glove to touch on a specific panel that then opens up a room.
Yeah.
Which is where the Confidential Order of Cookware Knights are hosted.
Yeah. We also have
secret race.
We also have, of course, the Trioxy Brillo range, which I believe you described as not only technologically possible, but also rather pointless as well.
Well, we had a bit of a conversation about this.
We did because
we
had far too much time on the hands.
I know. So we had a bit of a conversation about this.
Yeah.
It technically would be possible, but it would only work once, because you do have the whole self-heating cans and stuff like that for if you go camping. So the invention of a pan that can just heat water by itself with no heat. That could be fine.
Okay, but it can only be used once.
Yeah.
So what the hell's the point?
What's the point?
What's disposable pan?
A disposable pan, yeah.
Filled with chemicals.
And this is the technology that's so dangerous that Herr Bish is willing to kidnap the professor who invented this.
Yes, Professor Slintz.
Professor Slintz. He's willing to kidnap Professor Slintz and to set off a car bomb.
Yeah, so we can get hold of this. So get hold of the plans for a pan that can only be used once.
So they tried to get hold of the blueprints, couldn't. So went all King Kong style and just kidnapped the inventor and just sling him over the shoulder and run away.
The special one
they went for the nuclear option.
The special one slings Professor Slintz over his or her shoulder and runs off with them. But Belinda is absolutely traumatised by the whole thing, but rather than giving chase, just proceeds to give Agent Spooner a blowjob.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he's gotten away. Oh well, never mind. You want to chase after him? No, I'm going to bed. Fuck's sake.
Stop doing that.
So gonna get banned off YouTube.
It really is.
Seriously.
Another important thing
we
to
had
know.
problems with the bloody Warriors for this, right?
We did.
And we still haven't forgiven you.
Another important thing to note, I should mention, is that everybody within the universe of Belinda Blinked all wear thongs. They all wear black thongs.
Yes,
Whether they're male or female, everyone in this world wears a black thong.
The black thong thing it's an interesting one because, again, back to the footnotes that we just listened to, it's said that Rocky actually wears a thong around the house.
And while he's writing
yeah,
as well.
much to Jamie's absolute horror.
Because he's not in touch with his dad via phone, is he? Because his dad actually doesn't have a phone, so they keep in touch via email, which is why a lot of this stuff goes back and forth. So, it's not as if he's having a phone call with his dad every day. So a lot of stuff that he now knows about his dad, he's found out from the podcast and from these books he's written,
I mean, this guy must have gone through so much therapy. It's unreal.
Well,
I've been gone through. He's probably still going through it.
He's certainly turned a negative into a positive, and he's taking his friends along for the ride, and now he's taking us along for the ride as well. So, to Jamie and to James and Alice, we say thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing this journey continuing. And we have to say thank you to Josh, not only for introducing myself and Luke to the podcast, but for agreeing to guest star on this episode.
Can I just say that is the loosest definition of the word thanks ever used.
I mean, let's face it, when I first said to you, it was to you, Luke.
Yes, it was.
Would you like to listen to a podcast about an erotic novel? You literally wanted to slap me and then send me off to Sunday school. Let's face it.
Yes. To be fair, I still do.
You still do, but at the same time, you're there in confession every single week, so let's face it.
Well, it was shortly after that you put HR on speed dial, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With a restraining order put in place.
It's just there, ready to go. Whenever I need it.
Just out of interest, what do you say to the priest every week? Father, forgive me for I have sinned, I've been listening to pornography again. And then it turns out that the priest is a Belinker as well.
You'd be surprised. You would be surprised. It's like the theme tune for the intro theme tune. A few of us have set that as our mobile phone ringtone.
Yes.
And when you're out and about in public and that theme song goes off, you get a few people that are like almost meerkat style.
You get a couple of chuckles.
And you can normally spot the fans of My Dad Wrote Porno because they tend to be listening to the podcast on the train or in the gym, and they're trying hard not to laugh. As what's happened with me, I've made the mistake of listening to this podcast whilst at the gym and whilst on the train and what have you. You'll recognise me. I mean, obviously being a massive fat twat who can't stop eating, I do have a job trying to sort of hide myself from the fact that I'm cramming my fist into my mouth and going, and because I'm trying to stop myself laughing, it tends to come out as like yelps and grunts and what have you. My face goes red, I've got tears streaming down my face, so by the time I get off the train or get off the treadmill, I basically look like I've simultaneously won the lottery and been punched in the nose. But thanks to Rocky Flintstone, I now have a tolerance for mad-looking, red-faced people on trains and treadmills.
Well, there you go. Or you could be like the true professionals that myself and Mr. Murphy here are and listen to said podcast while at work.
Yeah, which is something you've roped me into as well, so thanks for that.
It is, but it then gives you the opportunity to spread the gospel, as we have done within our team. So yes, we've got
with many of our work friends and colleagues and what have you. Yes. It's the gift that just keeps on giving.
Oh, it really is.
When my dad retired, he wanted to write a book, but what he failed to tell me was that the book was pornography. I brought my dad's book to the pub and we started reading it.
We couldn't breathe. We were like screaming, laughing.
It's so bad that it's absolutely brilliant.
His use of language is bizarre.
How can you write about sex if you don't know where the vagina is? It's supposed to be sexy, and somehow it's the least sexy thing in the world.
More people need to hear this. We can't keep this to ourselves.
My dad wrote a porno, and now I'm reading it to the whole world. What am I thinking?
I just wanted to do that again.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
So we're in the pub, we're not enjoying a Chilean Chardonnay, as Belinda would no doubt approve of, but we're enjoying a few choices from Brewdog's current range at the moment. Yeah. Another Leeds Institute other than Leeds University, where the three hosts of the podcast met.
Yeah.
So, we'd like to claim my dad wrote a Porno was something that was born in Leeds. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I don't know whether we should be proud of that.
Yes, very
It
good.
really could go either way.
Yeah.
Anyways, besides, it's all his fault anyways.
Yes, we have his fault. Deviating from our usual usual stream of content.
Myself and the big daddy thing, we're kind of respectable,
Well, let's not go too far.
We review films for fun, and then he comes along and brings in,
Brings in his podcast full of filth. Yeah.
Well, what do you expect from the youth of today?
Yes. This
is absolutely true.
That's what happens when two middle-aged movie boys bring a 20-something into the inner circle, into the bunker.
Yeah. This is basically the problem and the fault of millennials. I'm not one. I miss it by 4 years.
Too much porn in their podcasts.
Absolutely.
I mean, what else would you want in a podcast?
What else indeed?
It's fair point, really.
Well, the main question is, do we enjoy Belinda?
Absolutely. Because it's funny. I have laughed so much at this podcast. It is.
Well, to be fair, we've laughed, we've retched,
we've cringed.
We've basically. and then
I think we may have caused certain people to fall off treadmills.
Yes,
that has happened.
And almost be sick on a treadmill as well.
Yes.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Liz.
Another friend of the show.
Yeah.
There was very, very little I think we can add to what we've already said. No, basically just go off and have a listen, like it, etc. The following of this podcast is absolutely huge. And as I say, again, this is a podcast. It's 30-40 minutes tops, weekly podcast.
Yeah. Good commuting.
It's just as long as you don't mind looking like a mad twat when you're on the train.
The problem is that.
Well, yeah, make sure your headphones don't leak.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll be heard to be talking about dogging and other inappropriate things.
Other things that you should not be talking about. Probably not be talking about on YouTube.
There's quite a graphic bit, isn't there, where Belinda basically says, bend me over and fuck me
doggy style, yeah.
And Jamie's finding it really hard to read because again, this is something his dad's written.
And then they continue to rub it in.
Yeah.
Just be like,
don't say rub it in.
And that's, to be fair, that's usually the best bits where you know something when he doesn't want to say it, but he knows he's going to have to say it. I'm not saying that we take pleasure in your displeasure of what your father has written. Oh, by the way, your father wrote this.
Yes.
Just a reminder.
Just a small tad.
Between Rocky's written words, Jamie's speaking and his impressions, and
I have to say,
James and Alison's absolutely spot on, sort of razor sharp, wit and comebacks and what have you. It is one of the funniest podcasts, maybe one of the funniest things I think I've ever listened to this year, and I say, long may it continue.
Well, it's not long may it continue, to be fair, because I don't think we can. Not long may it continue, at least another couple of books worth, and then that's it, where Belinda eventually and inevitably dies of some sort of sexually transmitted disease.
She will be fucking riddled with the stuff. When's the last time she took a shower? Apart from in Ken Dewsbury's filthy cellar.
I have no idea she hasn't.
Although, what about the time when she went back to her flat and then proceeded to lock?
There's somebody locked in her flat. Probably dying.
Oh, what's her name?
Chiara Montague.
Chiara Montague.
Montague. Jesus.
That was
the name.
That was back in book 4. As far as we're aware, Chiara Montague is still in Belinda's.
It was just before the wedding.
Yes, it was.
She goes, I'll lock it and leave you here. I'll come back.
Well, hang on a minute. Wait a second. That makes it book 3.
Yeah. Oh my god. So we'll have the chapter where Belinda goes back to her flat, opens the door,
discovers
there's a dead body there.
A rotting corpse.
That'll be the next thing. So we've had this fight. Next one, Belinda gets accused of murder.
Belinda
you go.
blinked how to get rid of a dead body. And why is the music...
Belinda blinked how to get away with murder.
Why is the music suddenly gone off as I said that?
I don't know.
That came out really... I'm not trying to get rid of a dead body, honest. Fuck's sake. Right.
But yeah, we need to wrap this up.
No, don't call the police. Don't call the police. There's no need for that.
Yeah, and with that.
And on that note...
Actually, we could probably do that as the next podcast. How to get rid of a dead body.
Well,
right. We're going to catch up on some... We're going to catch up on some quality drinking then, ladies and gentlemen. But be sure to join us next time for the next episode of We Need to Talk About ... In the meantime, I've been the Big Daddy D, David Mabley.
I am Luke Murphy.
and I'm Josh Bray.
Do all the usual stuff, like, share, subscribe,
somewhere.
all the usual gubbins and what have you, all that good social media business, and we'll see you again next time. Bye!
Cheers!
I've got my parts, I've got my pants, I got my Rocky to rock me, that's where it began. I'm all that you need, I'm all the good stuff, I'm here when Bella and Donna won't be enough. Let's get undressed, let's never stop, let pomegranates sing freely with rivets atop. Come into my world, come into my dream, come fill my lids so completely moist from the steam. I'm in the mud, I'm on a roll, give me a tickle, baby, show me the vibe.
T is for tonic. Our 6 titties are supersonic. We don't mind men and we don't mind fuss. We're the Glee team, come and get us!
Told you we'd fucking do it.
I hate